have our speaker, who is going to continue to take us further on the journey of development and resilience. His name is Eric Darko Mattocks, and let me tell you a little bit about him. He is an author, an education thought leader, who explores how representation, sustainability, and values-based learning can unlock young people's potential and inspire a new generation of responsible leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eric.
I normally have that problem when I wear my heels, so it's okay, I understand. Only joking. Just in case that gets on the tinterweb. Well, good morning, everyone. As rightly said, my name's Eric Darko Mattocks, and it's my privilege to stand here before you this morning. I'm an author, an educator, and a relentless believer in the potential of young people. I was born in Accra, Ghana. And the home of good jollof, as well as every other jollof. Yeah, you know, he started it, so I had to throw in 2 pence. But, you know, before we start World War III in here, you know, I grew up in Edmonton, North London. Hey, big up. So my story is like many of us in here. It sits between 2 continents, cultures, and identities. There's a special place in my heart for black youth in the UK and in Africa. But let me be clear before I start. My mission is for every child, from every background, to see themselves in a story and know that their life matters. But my focus on Africa is not about favoring one child over another. It's about making sure that no child, especially those too often overlooked, is left out of a story. You know, it's been said that if you don't have a dream of your own, you end up inside someone else's. You know, growing up in Edmonton, I spent many years searching for myself through pages. My mum always used to say to me, Kwame, born on Saturday, Kwame, you don't read enough. Yeah, my mum understood something though. My mum had no formal education, but she knew that reading books enables somebody to leave their postcode and enter into a realm where they could never do by themselves. You know, I work with a lot of youth in Leicester, and they always ask me, what's one piece of advice you, if you were younger, that you would take on yourself? And I said, I would read more. You know, reading, somebody can have studied for 40 years and put all of their knowledge into one book, and you can read one book and gain 40 years of knowledge in the space of a week or a month or however long it takes you to read. You know, I grew up on, Eric Charles, the Very Hungry Caterpillar. I don't know if you heard that. Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, and R.L. Stein's The Goosebumps Adventures. And these books are packed with imagination and humor, with authors. These books are packed with imagination, humor, yet rarely did I see an author that looked like me, sounded like my family, or carried the rhythm and the history of the African continent. You know, representation should not be a luxury, it should be a foundation. Representation whispers to a child, somebody like you has done what you dream of doing. So their dreams can be legitimized. You know, their stories matter. You know, I always dreamed of being an author, but like many of us, my parents with the best intentions held you need to work hard. Yeah, 9 to 5 mentality, be safe. They wanted security. They didn't know anyone who looked like us and lived from words on a page. Without seeing that, they couldn't imagine it. I do apologize. I wrote this practically last night, so if I do stutter a little bit, your graciousness would be appreciated. And plus, I'm very tired. I'm very tired. My daughter woke up around about 2 a.m. and thought, you know what, I'm just going to keep everybody up. So coffee has been injected into me intravenously. So thank you very much for your patience. And so all my parents knew was that 9 to 5. Yeah, work hard. My mum and dad both cleaners, and they had their own key job in this, so that they can go to different houses and businesses and things. So they knew to work hard, but what they didn't know is that the systems that they're working in is shaping them, shaping us into taxable workers, handing us shiny things to aspire to. So that we can have a weekend, 2 days of the week to enjoy them. You know, never getting ahead, never making a difference. Our youth, especially black youth and young people across Africa, often are being robbed of their permission to dream. You know, that's why I write, that's why I speak, and that's why I'm here today. When a child opens a book, something shifts inside of them, a permission, an awakening, a new horizon. Books are not stories, they're mirrors and they're windows. Mirrors so that a child can see who they are, and windows so that they can see who they can become. Our responsibility as this generation of leaders is to ensure the next generation has something to look to, something to aspire to, and honestly, something to surpass, because we need to raise up better versions of ourselves in the next generation and the generations to come. When our children see characters who solve problems, protect the planet, build communities, and lead with courage and empathy, they begin to imagine themselves as the scientists, as the engineers, as the teachers, as the prime ministers, and as the presidents, as guardians of the earth for the generations that follow. You know, through the adventures of Tuck the Little Fire Truck, I'm working to create exactly that. Early years stories that help children see possibilities and not their limitations. Starting in the UK and then eventually reaching across Africa, this is our hope. My hope is one day to be able to take young black kids in the UK over to Africa, over to the Caribbean. I was speaking to a distinguished lady in here saying that normally when, you know, it's the holiday, you know, school programs, they take kids to Europe and they take kids to the National History Museum and so, and kids are learning of a history which is important. I'm not saying that to discredit anybody's history, but they very rarely learn about their own history. I recently went back to Ghana, it was back in 2023. Feels like yesterday, I've been so busy. And you know, going around Ghana, I always like to go and see the places where slaves were kept, to have an understanding on the freedom that I stand on has been paid by the blood of so many other people that went before me. Education is more than exam results. It's identity, it's confidence, and it's action. Right now in the UK, organizations like the National Literacy Trust are sounding the alarm. Too many children are starting school already behind in reading, and children in the poorest communities are the ones that are hardest hit. Many grow up without no books in their home at all. That's part of the reason why, you know, with Chris Desai, we launched the Natural Literacy Project to push for primary schools to have access to books, libraries, and regular reading, to get books into the hands of kids that most likely would not have the chance to have books themselves. And you know, we're also starting to try and partner and build an AI app that goes with the book as well, that we can also send to Africa, so kids not only are, you know, reading books but also they're not being left in the dark ages, and they're able to work with tech and emerge and grow up with it themselves and help empower their future going forward. But this mission cannot stop at the UK borders. You know, I read this stat that by 2050, more than half of the world's youth will be African. That's not just a statistic, that's a superpower waiting to be recognized and nurtured. You know, I work with children from all backgrounds. I love seeing children light up in front of a book. At the same time, I carry a specific burden for the black communities here in the UK who rarely see themselves as authors, as owners of their own story, and for children across Africa who deserve access to books. This is not about choosing African children instead of others. It's about making sure African children and black children globally are no longer the last to be thought of when it comes to designing education, sustainability, and opportunities. We must build education systems that teach critical thinking, not memorization. Celebrate curiosity instead of punishing mistakes. Link learning to real-world challenges and opportunities. Root children in history, culture, with a moral compass. And invite them to imagine a sustainable, just future for them, their village, their city, their town, or wherever they come from. Sustainability has no color, no passport. Climate issue doesn't come around knocking around and checking what ethnicity you are. But representation still matters in this space. If the only environmental experts our kids see are of nationalities and races that are not theirs, they're going to think that it's someone else's job to look after the planet. Africa is rich not just in resources, but in people, in biodiversity, in traditional knowledge about living in a balance with nature. But sadly, deforestation, pollution, climate vulnerabilities, wildlife losses, and unsustainable development. If we do not educate the youth here and across Africa, they'll be destined to repeat the same mistakes until there's almost nothing left for them to protect. I've got very little time left, so I'm just going to skip to the end here. I feel like I'm preaching a sermon. And I won't bore you guys much longer. I've just lost my place, and here we go. So my hope is for some young black boy or black girl to look and see an author that of their similar color and be like, it's possible for me to do that. But my bigger dream is that I want to help plant foundations that pave the way for a better, brighter, sustainable future. Getting books into the hands of children across the UK, and then driving those same stories and new ones into classrooms, libraries, homes all across Africa and the Caribbean, starting with communities that raised us, and then the ones we often forget. I want my great-great-great-grandchildren to stand in African soil one day and see the strength of the rhino, see the roar of the lion, the wisdom of the elephant, not reading about it, what used to be, but living in a world we chose to protect. If we want to be a part of what we're building through literacy, through sponsorship, through partnership, come and talk to, if you want to be part of that, come and talk to me afterwards. But I close with this. I want to leave you with this question. What will you help shape for the next generation? What mirror will you create? What window will you open? Because every time we invest in our youth, every time we offer representation instead of erasure, every time we put a book in the hand of a child, every time we give them values and vision, every time we empower their curiosity, we are not just educating the child, we are shaping Africa, we are shaping the world, and we are creating a better future. Thank you very much.